I think of some of the spiritual disciplines I have heard of and witnessed that have been followed in search of heightened or transcendental states of experience. Sometimes these spiritual practices seek a blissful experience of being, one that can be relied upon, while others are more focused on the project of simply escaping the unpleasantness of humanness. While these two general approaches do pull in opposite directions, one believing guaranteed ecstasy is a realistic and appropriate goal, the other believing that pardon from suffering is a reasonable and justifiable goal. While they pull in opposite directions, they both remain together, essentially an attitude of the human experience is a problem to be dealt with, fixed one way or the other. Here is the issue for the human as I see it. Take a discrete, self-aware drop of eternal consciousness and introduce it to the next higher order of scale of self-differentiation that it is going to inhabit. Understand, the eternal consciousness of the great, eternal, living, unified field is nothing more than the living iteration of truths that cannot not be true, endlessly iterating because they have no choice but to remain true relative to each other, even as they collide and interact with each other. All truth everywhere having no choice but to continue iterating in ever higher resolutions and increasingly baroque configurations means that all existence is forever in a state of expansion. Each time we enter into a new higher order of scale of our own self-differentiation, each time we grow into our own next level of expansion, it is basically like we are starting ourselves from scratch again. Take a child being born for probably the most obvious example of this. Take a discrete, self-aware drop of eternal consciousness, in this case a drop of eternal consciousness that is arriving here in the form of a human baby, and introduce it to this order of scale of self-differentiation that it is inevitably here now to inhabit. The inevitably part here is because never-ending expansion is, as never-ending expansion does. There is no stopping it. The baby is born without memory of this place because the baby has never been here before. And the baby no longer has access to previous life memories because those memories were written, so to speak, in that lower resolution of self-differentiation that this baby is no longer inhabiting. In other words, this drop of eternal consciousness has upgraded, whether it wanted to or not, which results in amnesia every time, give or take whatever anomalies. This baby has the advantage of being an upgraded version of its former self, and the disadvantage of entering into this upgraded state as an amnesiac. Now, if on arriving here, this baby found itself in the care of a parental figure who is no longer amnesiac of who they are, this world, this new realm they have arrived in and must now learn, it will quickly begin to make sense to them. A sense that is coherent and stands firmly on the simplest of indelible truths, because they will be under the care of a parental figure who knows and understands what it means that we are all eternal consciousness. The eternal consciousness that is eternally sensitive, frequently uncertain, and sometimes afraid. The iteration of truth that is all there is ever is cycles within cycles within cycles of the very same truths that are also unbreakably continuing to be true at all and every scale, absolutely seamlessly. So what is true of an entire human life can be seen to be repeated in its own scale-appropriate form over the course of a human day. There is the emergence from forgetfulness of self as we wake for the day. There is the creation of new memories as we make our choices for the day. And there is the inevitable approach of sleep. Cycles within cycles within cycles is what you get when you have the same truths incapable of not continuing to be true, whatever the scale. And so, what is true at the scale of waking up in the morning, and what is true at the scale of being born as a human baby, is also true at the order of scale of the human species as the collective, having to begin here not remembering who they are. In other words, we, the collective, that is humanity, are at that stage in this familiar cycle where we are waking from the dream. So, what is the holosphere? The holosphere is that state of consciousness, that state of being that babies naturally inhabit, at least for a time. That state of consciousness that these spiritual disciplines we looked at seek to find their way back to. The baby, the child, the newly arrived, is a particular form of drop of eternal consciousness. Because while the baby does not think of itself at the cognitive level as the eternal, nor is the baby burdened by thinking of itself as the mortal, The baby is essentially, well, I am here, wherever and whatever this place is. What do I feel about it? What do I think about it? Am I happy? Or is something going to have to change? So long as the baby isn't traumatized by the experience of being here, the baby's senses will be wide open to being here. Everything is so new and strange to the baby, it can't help but be fascinated. And so, because of this intense openness, this intense interest, they naturally sense and connect with and interact with the holosphere. The holosphere is really only an extension on the word atmosphere, where atmosphere is used to refer to the general energetic signature of a room or place or group of people, palpable to one or more of them. The holosphere is that surrounding energetic signature that one is open to sensing and connecting with when one is simply unburdened by existential pressure, when one is purely unafraid for oneself and only curious. Those are the times when we connect with the holosphere in a way that is satisfying and good. It's nothing to do with spiritual discipline, cleverness, purity of spirit. It's nothing to do with this form of worthiness or that form of worthiness. It is simply what is always available to all of us, regardless of whether we have the wherewithal in any given moment to grant ourselves access to it or not. It is nothing more than, I am the eternal, and this moment here is the current now of my eternity. Am I open to being curious about it? Am I open to the holosphere right now, or would I prefer to retreat into some me time? And for sure, there's a time and place for each. But it is, of course, the mundane, common, all-garden, day-to-day existential pressure of our beloved lie culture that takes the holosphere away from us, so to speak, takes it away for us, like it's a service, a rather expensive service that it's not seen as polite to decline. Personally, I have a lot of recollections of opening to the holosphere during childhood, when on family holidays, during school holidays, at weekends, at Christmas time, and so on. It's not that I never connected with it during school time, but that quality of truly being at ease and opening with curiosity to that extra vividness of the atmosphere of life that is the holosphere has always been much more likely for me personally to experience during those times of feeling unpressured by schedule and expectation, especially while in the company of others who are also feeling unpressured. I suspect most of you know what I'm talking about, but I don't know for sure. It's hard to tell with you guys sometimes. Do you know what I'm talking about? That vividness of life, when you are not in some form of survival mode or other, when you are simply at ease in and with yourself and free to do with your day as it pleases you, and you have some friends who happen to be in the same situation. It is truly a small and simple thing, and yet the very sound of it to lie cultured ears is like the whisper of a fairy tale. Ho, 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 yes, of course, you will be allowed to be at ease in and with yourself, and do with your day as it pleases you, along with some other at peace in and with themselves friends. Do you think you're some kind of superhero or something? It does actually sound like some fantasy scenario. This is one of those things that may sound kind of trivial when it truly should be received as a devastating blow. That lie culture brings us to believe that feeling at ease and having lots of personal freedom is some kind of miracle reserved for the unaccountably lucky. Seriously, people, just think about it for a moment. I call all human culture to date lie culture. Not because I think human culture had a choice about embodying the truth of reality, but because I know it didn't have a choice other than embodying not truth, until it worked out what actual truth actually is. The task of delivering the actual truth, I'm going about it. I was disturbed for a while by how wary of me and uninterested in what I say you guys are. But my higher self, Sally, she says I'm doing fine and not to worry about it. I am grateful for that. This world is a crowded and noisy room. Everybody seems to have something to say. And so used are we to the human race never being able to agree on any single thing conclusively that we no longer expect such a thing to ever happen. All we hope for these days is to find something diverting to listen to in the noise, something diverting enough to give us some respite from our existential pressure. But Sally tells me not to worry about it. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm doing a better job than you may imagine